Hi everyone and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. We're here on our usual Monday show and we're looking back at everything that happened over the weekend, and we had two massive Ulster derbies in the National League this week. And Mal, I'm going to come straight to you. We focused on Cavan and Down last week on our preview show, but to kick off today's show we're going to go to Donegal and Derry. And I was at the Armagh ladies game yesterday. I was just flicking through trying to keep up to date with the scores, and it looked like there was a massive upset on the cards here, and eventually Donegal turned it round to get the win.
Yeah, Sean, Derry were ahead for 44 minutes of the game, and at one point were 8 points up with 55 minutes on the clock. So it was looking very much like Derry were going to get their first win, albeit Donegal had the breeze, and it was the 2 point factor that they had, and that was the difference. Michael Murphy coming on was another factor. He made 3 goal chances. Jamie Brennan didn't take his 2, and then Shane O'Donnell finished his. So the Murphy influence was a significant factor. Also, Derry lost Owen McAvoy and Brenton Rodgers at a crucial time. But yesterday's game was probably a summary of Derry's season, really. Scoreboard analysis tell you that they've got 1 point on the table, but they're actually playing some decent stuff in terms of trying to play. I think they're learning the rules a bit better now, but the problem is it's so competitive, and there's no room for that. You know, as Paddy says afterwards, we're blooding players, we're learning, but we're not winning games. And probably from the Derry side of things, last week against Dublin, for 35 minutes, it was 1-10-0, and in the last 11 minutes yesterday, it was 1-7-0. So those two massive chunks tell you all you need to know. Owen Lynch was back in goals. He made a brilliant save, and his kick-out variation was pretty good. But in the last 5 kick-outs of the game, Sean, Derry only won 1 of them. The goal came off one. It was pretty unfortunate. Conor Glass kept the ball and tried to flick it into himself. And if he had let it go over the sideline, and he had a decent game at midfield, that ends up in the net. And then another kick-out that was lost, they got a 2-pointer from it. And I think the only kick out they won in the last wee while was Patrick McGurk won one, but they didn't make anything of it. There was one with Dan Higgins, one was a touch in the ball, maybe question mark one, where all Derry needed was a break at that point, but they weren't able to get it. And that was just the story of the score side of the game. You've Marty Bradley in picture there, had another very good game for Derry. Derry looked like a team yesterday who were playing for Paddy Tally. They were playing for each other. Marty Bradley made a block on Dara Wheel early on. They defended a lot better. They actually looked a bit like Armagh in the first half. They were just shuffling left, shuffling right. They had a lot. They looked like a team that had learned. And as I say, and as you not touched on, they got into a winning position. But the problem was those 2 areas of the game when they couldn't get hands on the ball. And I suppose Donegal had 15 wides, 14, 15. And maybe created loads of goal chances, so they could have won the game a lot easier. But it leaves Derry hanging on by an absolute thread. From Donegal's point of view, they look like they're going to be in the league final. Murphy was the addition. Owen McFadden Ferry came on, which was a plus for them. You'd imagine he'll play the next 2 games. And I'd have to say, a pretty entertaining game at that. But from a Derry side of things, frustrating, empty-handed, learning but not winning. And Jim actually said in his post-match interview, he chatted about how lethargic they were, but they found a way to win. And he touched on the fact that he now knows exactly what Derry are going to bring in 5 weeks' time. So that's a sort of brief summary of it, and it leaves it precarious for Derry now.
Just before we move on, Mal, like if they're playing well and they've been in these games, like they were in this one, they were in the Tyrone one to the last couple of minutes, same with Kerry. Dublin's probably the only real tanking they've took. So like, is relegation the worst thing in the world if they're playing well? I know nobody wants to get relegated, but is it going to be the worst thing in the world if it ends up happening to Derry, as long as the performances are still good?
It probably wouldn't be, albeit it's a better place to develop. Dublin and Derry aren't actually that far apart in terms of the table. Like Dublin's place in the table is maybe a wee bit false, but they managed to win those games. Like Derry could be sitting with 6 points. They're not, but they could be. But the issue is that probably, as I touched on it last week, I'll touch on it briefly here, is the problem is the level of experience that they don't have now. Derry are going into a Mayo game that's a must-win game. 2 years ago, they played Kerry, and they were on the cusp of getting an All-Ireland final. Of the 20 players that played that day, 10 of them will be unavailable against Mayo. People are talking about, Paddy Talley, new manager in, what's happening, but that's the volume of players. If you think back to Galway last year, we're in a similar situation where Padraig Joyce could hardly fill the bench. So that's the situation, but relegation is very, very much on the cards. And I suppose with Mayo winning probably was another factor as well.
And now on to our other big Ulster game from the weekend. It was Cavan and Down, and I suppose we'll touch on Down after you give us a brief roundup, because they're probably in a similar situation as Derry, that they're performing well, they're playing well, but they haven't got the points on the board. But a big win for Cavan here. It means that they're looking up rather than looking down, basically, after a poor start to the league.
Yeah, I was just following online, and it seemed like a cracking game of football. It just seemed like neither team could get ahead of the other one. It was very close all the way, and Rowan McKernan, who was man of the match, he kicked a brilliant 2-pointer later on that sort of re-energised Cavan, and Down back, but it was Cavan who prevailed with a couple of late Oisin Brady frees, So I suppose there's a sense of deja vu, because last time last week I was talking about how Cavan have turned things around, and I suppose you can nearly play back what I said last week. They're on a bit of a run at this stage. From what I can gather, they've effectively secured the division survival. I think it would be a very, very unusual set of circumstances for them to miss out. And a lot of the lads who weren't going particularly well in the first rounds of the leagues are now delivering on a weekly basis. The movement is a lot happier coming out of Cavan at the minute than it was literally a month ago.
And Down, obviously in the same situation as Derry in terms of playing well, but just not get the points on the board now. But I was asking Mal, if Derry go down, is it that disastrous? And it's maybe not. Down feels like it would be a massive blow, because they work so hard to get up into Division 2. They've won the Talton Cup, then the Sam Maguire. If they get relegated, obviously they're back into the Talton Cup, they're back down in Division 3. It would feel like a massive blow to the development of this team if they do go down, and it would be such a pity because they've been so competitive.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, the league's very ruthless beast, and I was listening to an interview yesterday with WSV's manager Dermot McCabe by Tommy Rooney, and they seem to be playing very well, but can't get points on the board either. So there's similarities there, and yeah, it takes some work from Down to stay up at this point, and naturally enough, they'll be disappointed. But I suppose the good thing is there's championships around the corner, and if they are relegated, they'll hopefully be able to move away from it very quickly.
I think Down play Westmeath next, so that's obviously going to be a massive game at the bottom of the table. Just back up to Division 1 then, and I was in the Athletic Grounds on Saturday night for Armagh and Dublin, and it was a brilliant occasion, brilliant entertainment and everything else. But I suppose the game did live up to the expectations. Armagh certainly did in the first half. They charged, I think they were 12 points up maybe at one stage. They certainly were at half time, they were 12 points up, but just incredible pace, just their kick out, their hunger around the Dublin kick out. Dublin couldn't win a break ball, couldn't get possession from their own restarts at all, and Barry McCambridge come forward, as we've seen him last year doing a number of times for Armagh, hitting the back of the net from the full back position. And it was 12. They were 12 points up at half time. It looked like they were home and hose, but these, whether it's the new rules or the weather or whatever it is, it's no games over at half time. And Dublin came out and charged back ended in the second half. Now, there was a few, maybe controversial moments, you could call them that. Like, I know Armagh, Ethan Rafferty was blown up one time for going over the 20-second limit for his kick out. Well, actually, it was only 16 seconds, and Dublin got a huge bounce off that. They pressed up on the Armagh kickouts, and suddenly Dublin were dominant around the middle of the field. And of course, there was Cormac Costello's score as well that looked wide. But I know Dublin were arguing that it would over the bar, possibly over the post, which I think equals wide. So I think the right decision was reached. But I suppose the big turning point was Dublin got it back to, I think it was 4 points, and Armagh won a break ball. Soupy Campbell gets it, moves it forward to Greg McCabe, and he just restores Armagh's 5-point lead, and it's just not sailed home heavy, but they eased home after that for 8 points. And Mal, I know you tuned into this game. What did you make of it all?
I thought that Armagh were excellent. Stephen Forker was in our pod a few weeks ago, and he chatted about Armagh weren't even tipped by some of the pundits as All-Ireland contenders at the start of the year, and them All-Ireland champions. Like, Saturday night just proved it. They're really up there, and I think they're actually really suited to the rules. Like Oisín O'Neill peeling in to kick that 2-pointer. I think Derry, Donegal, and Armagh defend the same way. Derry have moved into that category of trying to defend the D, but Armagh attack with pace. They really do. And like, I think whenever Dublin had got back to 4 and then the point was disallowed, I think Merlin plucked a kick out as well, which was another wee turning point in the game. What about Ethan Rafferty's pass for the goal? But I think the 20-second kick-out thing is absolutely ridiculous. There's no other way of saying it. How that was brought in, I have no idea. Goalkeepers are now faced with a wind. They've got a 40-metre arc. And all of a sudden, they're being forced to have a kick-out away in 20 seconds.
And they've no clock, Paul.
No clock whatsoever. It's absolutely ridiculous. That has to be through in the bin by the time of this podcast's over. It's ridiculous because goalkeepers are being completely robbed of everything, and now they've been faced with this rule. And umpires can't even go to get the ball. They're not allowed to. They get marked down, but the referee gets marked down if their umpire goes to get the ball. So it's just crazy. And then when you think that Meath got a goal 3 seconds after the hooter yesterday, and it counted, and then Ethan Rafferty on 15 seconds. And another factor is if the home crowd start to get on the referee's back.
Yeah.
And it actually got to the stage, I think Everton Comfort was out very quickly. He ran and got the ball. But because he got the ball so quickly, it seemed as if he was on the ball for a long time. You've got to give the referee, so a free taker is allowed to take as long as he wants, but a goalkeeper can't. I agree with Geezer, straight into the bin. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
I think possibly Ross Kiar tweeting yesterday that Shane Walsh took 40 seconds or so for his last minute kick. But
there you go.
Double what a goalkeeper's allowed, but will not fix anything today. I think the FRC are meeting today or this week, so that's.
But Armagh were brilliant, Sean. They were absolutely class, and the rules suit them. So I'm sure they're looking forward to another decent summer now.
Hopefully, Mal. Hopefully. Just before we take a break now, I'll come back to you. And Fermanagh had a massive point on at the weekend against Sligo. They drew 119 apiece, I think it was.
Yeah, I suppose the story of that game was quite simple. It was Fermanagh's late comeback. They were 7 points down, 65 minutes on the clock, and I suppose it shows that the benefit of these 2-pointers. They got 3 2-pointers in a row. Declan McCusker, Darvin Jones, and Sean Cassidy leave only a point between the teams, and come with the man, come with their goalkeeper, Sean McNally, who kicked a great point from play to snatch the draw. No more than Fermanagh deserved, and fair play to them. It's been a tough enough league to play in some respects, but they're hanging in there, and that was a massive point for them against a really solid Sligo team as we've seen in the last couple of years.
So we're just going to take a quick break before part 2, and we'll be back with the rest of the games after our wee break.
The Gaelic Lives podcast is brought to you by the Northwest News Group. We publish several local newspapers in the region, including the Ulster Herald, Strabane Chronicle, Tyrone Herald, Donegal News, and the Fermanagh Herald. We also have a number of online news brands, including wearetyrone.com. The Northwest News Group, telling the stories that matter to you.
And now I'll come back to you because I know Tyrone got a draw as well against Galway, same as Fermanagh. But Tyrone, is this one that is it a point gained or a point lost? Probably a point gained beforehand, but when you're winning with a couple of minutes left, you think you want the 2 points. So how's the reaction in Tyrone about this one?
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself, but it was a bit of a sucker punch, not late equaliser from Shane Walsh. looked like Tyrone had won it. Matty Donnelly kicked a late 2-pointer from play. Then there was a bit of a, I suppose, I don't know what, a bit of confusion when Peter Haig came back on and Tyrone breached the new 3v3 rule. So Galway had an opportunity to win it, and there's probably no better man than Shane Walsh to take a 2-pointer. He was facing into the breeze, and even though the game wasn't televised, there were a few clips of it going around on Twitter last night, and it was a cracking point to be fair to them. So yeah, Tyrone be disappointed by the result, but probably encouraged by the performance. It was the best performance in league campaign to date. There was a lot more aggression in the display, as Malachy Orr was happy to acknowledge in his interview afterwards. Derry Cavan scored 1-5, I think it was. Mark Bradley scored 7 points, and one of them was a 2-pointer. It's a bit funny these days when you say someone scored 7 points. But when you break it all down, it might be a 1-pointer or two thrown in there. But yeah, disappointing one. In fairness, Tune's a tough place to go, and yeah, I suppose speaking with Tyrone hat on, there's a sense of frustration that they didn't get 2 points, like particularly given the circumstances where Tyrone find themselves in now. There's 3 points on the board. They might still need something out of two final games because they end up with 5 points. It might come down to the head-to-head rule, and Tyrone a bit poor head-to-head against other teams battling survival, like Mayo and Armagh and whatnot, you know. So definitely squeaky bum territory for Tyrone, unfortunately, Sean.
And Monaghan, they're flying still. I think that was their 4th win in 5 games of the season. They beat Louth at the weekend, and it was down to their first half performance, really. They put in a massive shift in the first half. An incredible performance in the first half. Conor McCarthy bagged a goal and it put them 119-7 ahead. And again, like all these games, there seemed to be a massive change after the break, and Louth come back into it straight away. They got a goal of their own. They were chipping away at the scores, and then they got a goal of their own. Sam Mulroy, the main man up front, as we know, he struck a penalty, and that left just 3 points in it. So it was a massive final quarter in that game, and Rory Began tapped over a 2-meter free, as he does, and that just seemed to settle Monaghan, and they had enough to push on for victory then. And I suppose that leaves them. They're at the top of the table at the minute. They're joint by Meath and Roscommon on 8 points, but they're top on score difference. So I think they have down on the final day of the season. I'm not sure who else they have, possibly Westmeath, or maybe they've played Westmeath, but they've 2 massive games now in the last couple of weeks, and it would be a brilliant end of the campaign if Monaghan could get back to Division 1, because obviously with Conor McManus retiring, it seemed to be a team in transition, and we've been saying that maybe for a couple of years, but it would be huge for Gaelic Brannigan and Monaghan if they could get back into Division 1. So a big couple of weeks coming up for the Farney men. And Mal, just back to yourself then. Antrim and Laois played at the weekend, and it was another defeat for Antrim.
Yeah, I suppose it's the inconsistent card with Antrim, but away games are always very difficult to win. They were 6 up at a stage, Sean. I think the crucial stage, 45 minutes. Cavan Keenan got sent off on a second booking, and like he was a Tottenham Cup All-Star last year and was a relative newcomer to inter-county football. So a big loss when you sort of, I think, from reading reports and from hearing people who follow Laois, they use their goalkeeper very well. So then you've got an extra man on top of that. So they were able to use the middle third pretty well. At half-time, Conor Hand's goal had Antrim 1-9 to 11 points up. Connor Johnson and Mick Byrne, their keeper, added points. Mark Barry, I think it was the 6th point of the game. He levelled the game before Laois pulled away. They got their noses in front. But Niall Burns, Dominic McInhill, Niall Burns was excellent last week. He kicked in with a point. But Dermot McAleese and Paddy McBride, I think they kicked 2-pointers in the closing stages. I'm not too sure of the time on that, but it just wasn't enough to get them back into it. But it leaves them. They're at home to Sligo, Sean, in their 6th game. Sligo are scraping for points. Like that's going to be as they talk about, a 4-pointer at the bottom of the table. And then they have to go to Kildare in the last game. And with Kildare slipping up, Kildare might need that to clinch their league final spot. So it's going to leave it tricky for Antrim at the bottom of the table. A disappointing result because they've been putting in decent performances, but probably a wee bit like Down and like Derry and like Westmeath. A lot of teams are like this, and winning's a habit, but losing's a habit. So teams are just they're scrambling around in the dark to try and find some sort of consistency, and Antrim tick that box as well. They were missing Mark Jordan and the Aha Gallen Rory McCann, who's a target man. So and Mark Jordan's a massive player for them transitionally around the middle. So they're two losses with injury. So I'd imagine they're hoping that those boys will be back in the frame for what's two massive games, and a bit like Niall touched on the whole Tyrone thing at the bottom of the table and Derry and Down. Those last two games are going to be massive, unfortunately, from our point of view, for us, the teams at the basement, and Antrim could be sucked into that as well.
So we'll move on then to our roundup, and this is our ladies roundup on Armagh. Continue their winning streak at the top of Division 1, and they beat Kildare 215-1-7. Niamh Henderson and Emily Druce getting the goals for them. Tyrone suffered a big defeat to Waterford. They lost 6-15 to 6 points, while Monaghan beat Clare in Division 2 4-11 to 1-9, and it was 2 goals apiece for Jennifer Duffy and Eva Sherry there for Monaghan, while Donegal, they suffered their first defeat of the league campaign. Galway proved too strong on the day, 2-16 to 0-6. Division 3 and Down pulled off a draw against Wexford. Down had 7 points on the board at half time, and Wexford cruised ahead 1-7 to 7 points on a late goal for Down, saw them capture a share of the spoils. So a big win, or a big draw there for Down, a big point to get from that game. Cavan beat Offaly 3-12 to 0-4. 3 first half goals helped them earn that victory, while Derry got their first win of the season with 5-15 to 0-4 win over Kilkenny. Anya McAllister had a hat-trick, while Kiva O'Kane and Niamh Hannon also scored goals for Derry, and there were wins for Fermanagh and Antrim against Sligo and Wicklow in Division 4, and that guarantees Fermanagh and Antrim spots in the league semi-finals. In hurling then, Antrim drew with Carlow, and it was thanks to 2 goals from Conor Johnson and Jared Walsh. While in Division 2, Donegal suffered a 321 to 115 defeat at the hands of Kildare, while Down were huge winners over Tyrone 9-26 to 13 points. In Division 3, Cavan beat Wicklow 220 to 118. Liam O'Brien and Dylan Mulligan got the goals, while Armagh got their first win of the season thanks to first half goals from Park McNaughton, Charlie McArdle and Stevie Keenan, beating Sligo 315 to 119. And Leitrim and Fermanagh both lost their Division 4 games. Monaghan and Fermanagh both lost their Division 4 games. Leitrim beat Monaghan 118 to 016, while Fermanagh beat Warwickshire 018 to 112. Camogie results then: Down suffered a 2-point loss to Clare 110 to 011, while a second half goal from half-time substitute Dervla Cosgrove was enough for Antrim to see off Westmeath. In Division 2A, Derry lost to Offaly 210 to 08, while Carlow snatched a last-minute winner against Armagh, winning 1-9 to 011, and Tyrone tasted a 3-point loss to Wicklow 011 to 1-5. So just before we wrap up, then we'll go through our highlights. For Player of the Week, as I'd mentioned, Anya McAllister hit 3 goals for Derry, so I picked her as my Player of the Week. Nell, you've went for Grode McKiernan from Cavan.
Yeah. I suppose I mentioned him earlier. He played such a crucial part and very important win for Cavan, and good player to watch as well. Great for taking a point or two from distance, and they showed that again.
And Mal, you went for Dara Canavan.
Yeah, 2-9 in 2 matches, and a player I've spoken about many times in this pod that you just love watching play. His finish for the goal was excellent. So Tyrone fans are glad that he's back in the mix, and I suppose over the next few weeks he'll play a big part in how their league shapes up.
A result of the week, Mal, will stay with you. St. Pat's Mahara, our All-Ireland champions.
Yeah, former alma mater won their first ever All-Ireland Camogie title. They've won All-Irelands in hurling and football, so a huge result, bearing in mind that they were behind at a stage. They shipped 2 goals in the second half, and they were chasing the game, but right at the end, they got a point at the end, just when it seemed like it was going to go to extra time. So a huge result for them, and it backs up the Ulster sort of dominance they've had in recent years. So a huge reward for the efforts. And I'm going to be chatting to Brona Quigg later on just about the win, and that'll be in this week's Gaelic Life. So brilliant result for them. And I think St Dominic's, they won their All Ireland as well. St Pius has narrowly lost theirs. So a busy weekend on the Camogie front in Ulster.
And now you picked Armagh's win over Dublin as your result of the week.
Yeah, you can't. I suppose it looked like Dublin were going to get absolutely walloped at half time, but they did come back into it. But I suppose for me, there are question marks over Armagh heading into the season, because it's very hard to do the back to back, and there's no guarantees how well they'll actually do in the long run. But they seem to be going about things in a very professional manner so far. Even if they've lost a couple of matches, so they don't seem to. They're not taking a year out anyway, Sean, from the look of things.
Yeah, I went with Cavan, and Calvin's win over Down as my result of the week, just for the ramifications it has for both counties. Cavan, as I'd mentioned earlier, sort of looking up rather than down now, while Down there second from bottom, so it's a big couple of weeks for them. Shock of the week, I went with Tyrone and Galway, just simply because of the form of the two teams coming into the game. And I know, Nell, you've sort of echoed the same thoughts as myself with Shane Walsh's late equaliser.
Yeah, just for the fact that I suppose again where my Tyrone had, it was such an unfortunate way for the game to end. Looked like Tyrone were basically over the line, and then that went and happened.
And shock of the week, Mal, you went with Kildare losing their winning streak at the start of the year.
I suppose I thought they would be the sort of team that would have ran away with the title. They probably will still get promoted. I think it was Keelan Saxon might have won it with the last kick. I just saw League Sunday, so I don't know an awful lot about it, but a massive result. And probably it leaves the middle part of that table. I think there's 2 teams on 6 points, 1 team on 5, Antrims on 4. So it fairly shakes up that division.
And I'll keep with you, Mal, for your score of the week, Sean McNally from Fermanagh.
Yeah, the Fermanagh stats person, video man, PRO, whoever it is, had their highlights up again this week. We don't see enough of it. We spoke about Ethan Rafferty's pass for Brian McCambridge's goal, but this finish, Sean McNally, like Niall touched on it, he played out the field all the way through the game, but this move started a sideline. I think it was Shea Cullen intercepted a ball. Josh Largo Ellis had his hands on the ball. I think it was Josh played the pass, unbelievable pass to Sean McNally, and he put it over the bar, and how vital a point that turned out to be for Fermanagh. So 3 points in all, and I think it's only a second game this season, so a brilliant passage of play, and fair play to Fermanagh for getting those highlights up. All counties should take note. And
you picked Jared Walsh's goal as your score of the week.
Yeah, brilliant goal, snatch and equaliser for Antrim, last puck of the game, 35 metre free, and they went for it, and they got it. It probably only happens once out of every 100 shots or whatever, but paid off, and they got an important draw after the manner of hearing the recent defeats.
I picked Niamh Henderson's goal for Armagh as my score of the week, and it was more the move than the actual score, probably. Emily Druce run maybe 50 metres from the turn defence into attack for Armagh, and quick hands in attack. She moved it to Aoife McCoy inside to Henderson, and Henderson made no mistake in front of the goal. So that was my score of the week, and my unsung hero of the week is also an Armagh person, and I went for Greg McCabe, who has been so solid for Armagh this year. I know he missed last weekend against Mayo through injury, but 3 points from centre half back, and as I mentioned earlier, just when the tide looked to be turning in Dublin's favour, he got an important score to keep Armagh on track. So I picked him as my unsung hero. Niall, you've picked Niall Devlin.
Yeah, Niall's still only a young lad in terms of the trajectory of his senior inter-county career. He captain's Tyrone All-Ireland under-20 title a few years back, and he did a great job in Shane Walsh, which is no mean feat really, Sean.
And Mal, your unsung hero?
Yeah, I went for Gavin McCaver, my second ball on the screen person week after week from Marty Bradley. But Mahara qualified for another Hogan Cup final. They haven't lost a Hogan semi-final since 1985. They have an excellent record when they get out of Ulster. But Tralee, Mercy Mountauk, decent side. They had just got a goal. McCaver went up, got Mahara's first point. He scored 3 points in all. He was a brilliant link man. And to be honest, the 2 or 3 times I've watched Mahara this year, he's been very, very important to them. And I'm sure he'll be looking forward to the day out in Croke Park. And a big shout out as well to Joe Cassidy and the hurlers from Cross and Passion. They've booked another spot in the All-Ireland final, and I'll have some coverage from Mahara's Hogan camp and from Cross and Passion in Gaelic Life this week. So it's great to see the schools are heading towards exam season with a bit of success on the field as well.
So that's all we have this week, folks. We'll be back on Thursday. We have a feature podcast lined up on Thursday, and then of course we'll be back on Monday with our usual roundup show at 12 o'clock. So make sure to follow us on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and you get notifications whenever we post, which is regular on Monday and Thursday. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Mal and Nell for sitting on today's pod.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.